Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Ben, gotta love the dip right before the first of the month, indeed. If you missed that weird spike the other day, you get back in now. Good morning. Time is now. Thank you, Robert. Robert, the time is now. Beaumontan, good morning, Bitcoiners. I see a coffee. I see a sun. Nick, good morning. We love the coffee, Nick Tabs, indeed. Good morning, early rising racist. Don't tell anyone, Jason. It's only 8 here on the East Coast. We're only semi-racist. So, like, Latino people, totally fine, right? If you're on the West Coast and you're African American, I'm sorry, it might be too much for you here. But only if you're on the West Coast, right? If you're on the East Coast, you're allowed. I think it's not so racist. That's just my feeling, but I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong. I'm up at 4, so you shouldn't take anything I say seriously. Like I'm way gone, right? It's not cool. It's not cool. Bud, morning, Bitcoiners. Nick coming to us from the other side of planet Earth in Australia. Hello, friends. The moon is out. It was beautiful last night here. I got an amazing moonrise over the mountains. I did not see the moon set this morning, but that's okay. We'll live. Speaking of moon sets, let me just tell you right now, the sun has risen this morning. So we got a sunrise and Bitcoin's running. So let's have some coffee and talk about what is new. Bud, geez, don't say it out loud like that. Man, coming to us from Alberta. What is it, like 6 in the morning there? My God. Who knows what you're up to? Assalam, let's get started, Muslim Bitcoiner. Indeed, let's get started. You're here for some Moscow time. It's a good edition today. We got some good stuff. We're going to be talking about the administrative state today, everything that's gone wrong since World War II, everything that's about to go right. But let's get started with one of the stupidest countries in the world, right? It's all about countries today. And I'm not going to be talking about Canada right off the bat. This one comes to us from Germany, one of our favorite places in the world, right? We love Germany. This one's pretty good. So, Germany, they were probably the country in whiteboard is too white. Need some colors. They're coming. I got a new system coming, Defina. I got a new system coming. Don't you worry about the whiteboard. We got another one coming. So this comes from Germany, right? Germany, they were sort of the country most worried about Greta's feelings, right? What does Greta think? What should we do with our entire energy system, to make sure Greta is happy? So now I don't know if they solicited an opinion from Greta, but this happened, right? This is happening in Germany. Germany begins dismantling wind farm for a coal plant. What? Well, this one's good too, though. This is also in Germany. Okay, so democracy, right? Everyone's out there defending democracy, right? They're going to Ukraine to make sure they can defend democracy, and then the Germans probably have so much to teach the world about democracy, right? So they actually held a vote in a German town, right? They held a vote. Do they want migrants? Do they want a container village? They were going to build a container village, right? Because it worked the last round of mass immigration into Europe in the 1960s and 70s, especially in France, where they just built these de Corbusier cities, right? These towers. They call them the banlieue in France, but that just means suburbs. And I kind of had a lot of sympathy when I lived in France, because I was like, the country's so beautiful, but where you live is really ugly, right? So I would understand why people would be a little bitter. Now the Germans have this plan. So they asked a town if they want to build a new one of these cities, but this time they would do it with the shipping containers, right? So they could all go live in the shipping containers. The German town voted 91% no, right? So that's a little background, but here's the headline. After 91% in Germantown reject migrant container village, mayor says they'll be getting migrant tents instead. All right, so they got their way. Okay, they voted. There's not going to be a container village, right? But they didn't get to vote on the tent village, so that's too bad for them, right? So tent village coming in. This one I chose just because it's beautiful. It's just beautiful, right? And I think as Bitcoiners, you're all going to recognize exactly how Moscow time functions in the news. This is like Gelman amnesia. This is every lesson you need to know. So I'm just going to say this is from investing.com, right? investing.com. This is an actual headline. Ready? Digital gold could make Bitcoin obsolete, according to the World Gold Council president. Digital gold will make it obsolete, guys. We're done here. Let's shut the show down. Jesus, I'm going to go buy me some digital gold today, right? According to the World Gold Council president. Okay. Now, if you had a bit of a problem with, I know I said Germany was really doing some funny stuff here. And I said, Canada sometimes in the running for the dumbest country in the world, Australia, New Zealand, Germany has to be included all the time. They're always a contender. Now, this one is special from Canada, right? This one is special because now I don't really participate in much in Canada anymore. Like I don't really pay attention to the politics unless it's about Quebec separation or something like that. That's the only thing I'm for in Canada now. But the last election turned on a story about mass graves for Native American people, right? So apparently there were all these mass graves and it was a big shock. They had to do an impromptu national holiday, by the way, during the election process, right? So they found these graves and then they had to do a holiday to mourn. It was a national day of mourning, they said, right? So the whole country didn't have to go to work one day last year, right in time for the election, or 2 years ago now, I think it's 2021. So they didn't have to do that, right? So there'd be no work or anything, and all Canadians could sit around and think about their lives and what they could have done to avoid something that happened hundreds of years ago. But the only problem was they never really verified whether or not this actually happened, right? So they had a holiday. Trudeau was, he made it everyone else's fault. It was all our fault, right? It was all the people's faults, right? And they had to mourn. The holiday was like an obligation. It wasn't like, let's go party, right? It was like, think about what you can do. But it turns out, according to the New York Post, no human remains have been found after 2 years of claims of mass graves in Canada. What? Not a single grave? Oh. Cernovich says thousands of churches were burned down in retaliation to this hoax. No charges filed. Canada is an occupied country. You gotta laugh. That's Canada. You gotta laugh. But America doesn't have it much better, right? I know I go on about Canadians being stupid and Germans being dumb and New Zealand and Australia. America, they're not not exactly geniuses either, right? And this is being treated as just a normal thing. This is in New York City this weekend. It's a Labor Day weekend in America. Everyone's going to be doing backyard parties. I'm going to my agricultural fair in Quebec. You got all kinds of people doing all kinds of fun stuff. As we say in North America, if you're not aware of this is sort of our last weekend of summer. School starts now and all these things, right? So what are they going to do in New York City with all this fun coming this weekend? Well, this is from the Associated Press, right? This is another one of those. I can just read you the headline. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. This is normal stuff now, guys. New York police will use drones to monitor backyard parties this weekend. What? Is it going to go? Hey, what's that? It's a drone. Oh, pass me a beer. Are the hot dogs ready? As I said, well, I'll save this one. This is officially a Moscow time. I have one on Biden and school and end of summer, but I'm going to save it for later. It flows into the story later, so we're going to save that one. We got one more Moscow time here. One more, and this is from the New York Times, our favorite. Have you seen Elon Musk's new nickname for it? It's brilliant and it rhymes. It's the New Woke Times. The New Woke Times. It's pretty good, huh? The New Woke Times. So the New Woke Times wrote the following article. And I don't think they know what they said here, right? So here's what they said. The articulate ignorance of Vivek Ramaswamy. Did they just call a black guy articulate? Did they just do that? But they coupled it with articulate ignorance. Articulate ignorance. And then they say he's a cunning imitator of Trump. He's a cunning imitator. So that's what they had to say about Vivek, right? That's what they had to say about Vivek. And that kind of brings me to the theme today, right? The pathetic paper state machine persuasion. So, everyone knows Bitcoin is a state machine, right? And we're going to be talking about the machine of state today, right? Or the paper state machine. So it's not the state machine that we love. It's a separate one. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the inability of the news and the administrative state to conjure much more hypnosis than they have in the past. That their prime hypnosis days are behind them, and their ability to mass persuade is running out really quickly. And I think I'm going to make a pretty decent case explaining how that's happening. So first up, you just got to see that that headline itself kind of shows that polling and trends and the people who are really paying attention know that Vivek is surging, right? And so there's all kinds of people coming out, and that's why that thing he released at the top of the week, the attack ad or the attack talking point counter talking point drop that he put down, was really important. But now he's doing video ones on every single issue. And here's what he came and said about all of the new attack vectors on him, saying, we're surging, the knives are out, Alzheimer's drug, Israel, Iran. Here's the truth. Stay skeptical. Keep the questions coming, and I'll keep answering. And Cernovich added to that, Vivek is running the campaign the way I would. It's like a dream to me to witness all of my theories put into practice. So he comes out and does this, right? And, it's getting noticed by a lot. Trump was even asked about him yesterday, and Trump came in playfully, as I predicted, right? As I predicted. Remember, if you treat Trump well, he will always be nice to you, right? He won't do the things you expect that you've seen him do to DeSantis and all these. This was, going behind his back and running a campaign and da-da-da-da-da. So you can understand why Trump would unload him. So they asked Trump about Vivek, and he goes, it's kind of hard for me to say anything bad about this guy because, he said, I'm like, what, the greatest president in a generation? How long is a generation? He said, but he did say 100 years. So you hear Trump doing his thing, right? He's like, how can I say a bad thing? He's a smart guy. He's a talented guy. And they were asking him, is he going to be a good vice president? And Trump was sort of trying to lean off of that, saying there's something for him. He's going to be great. He didn't want to deny or put cold water on the vice presidential thing. I think he likes that people are speculating about it. I think he likes the symmetry, right? And he also came out. So Trump's been doing these new video addresses, right? He's been doing these new video addresses. He had a really good one yesterday on COVID and lockdowns, tying exactly what we've been saying, and a lot of people out there are observing that the sudden reappearance of COVID might be related to voting season. And he was coming out and saying, oh, guess what, right? There's a vote, so COVID's back. His exact line was, the left-wing lunatics are trying hard to bring back COVID lockdowns and mandates with all of their sudden fear-mongering about the new variants. They want to restart the COVID hysteria so they can justify more lockdowns, more censorship, more paper ballots heading into the 2024 election. He also did one yesterday on homeschooling, by the way. So Trump did another one of these addresses yesterday on homeschooling, and it actually was amazing. I don't really watch a ton of Trump content. I kind of can guess what he's going to say. A headline is usually enough for me to imagine, but sometimes when I want to hear the writing and the energy, I'll do it. So that's one reason. But sometimes he'll come into policy matters that I haven't really heard him touch on before, like homeschooling, this deeply. So he came in and said that the moment he's elected, he's going to institute the following. So right now, when he was president, he got up to $10,000 US trash token tax rebate for private school tuition. He thought that was helpful for school choice because indeed it takes $10,000 and sort of makes it free, let's say, in the sense that it's because it's tax deductible, you're able to use it and offset some salary, and it makes it just a lot more appealing to spend money on school in that way. So private schools had this, and it doesn't put them on an equal footing as far as advantages and all that, but it was helpful, and it was a way for the federal government to dip its toes into school choice. But here's what he says he's going to do. Right? He says he's going to take the $10,000 tax rebate and offer it to every American family homeschooling. Right? Isn't that amazing? So you don't even have to spend the $10,000 now, because before you had to actually spend the $10,000 on the tuition to get the offset. But now, what he called, if you take a courageous choice of homeschooling your children, you will get this $10,000 tax rebate just like that, right? So right away, he's addressing and talking to a specific group of people. And the reason I bring up the homeschool thing, not just because it affects me and because I love it, right? It is relevant to something Cernovich retweeted, something that he tweeted in December 2020, so just after the election, right? So just really before January 6th, but when it was really sort of dark, right? That period I remember being. Now, it didn't affect me in a sense, right? Because I was on with my life. I had predicted that he was going to have this kind of trouble, that the election was going to be hung, and that there would be a lot of scheming and scamming. I was sad for Trump. I was still behind him 100%, but I wasn't giving it my all attention. I was, turned the channel and was only doing Bitcoin stuff. But, I remembered this tweet when it came out, and I remember the feeling of the world, and it stays accurate. So he predicted it in 2020, and it still seems accurate today. And this is what he said. America is fracturing into three classes. Ruling elite, think the incompetents, Biden administrative types. 2, the masses, brainwashed by public school, believes the news, no chance at life. And then finally, the new elite, homeschooled, physically active and fit, and they loathe the fake news media, right? So I'd say his sort of characterization of the divisions within America are entirely accurate, right? That you do have this old elite, ruling elite, he calls them, but they're incompetent, and they're the min types. So the Karen Jean-Pierre, with the we call it a clown world, and then we see her every day, right? So, she's a beautiful woman, but she does remind me of a clown, right? That's just me, right? I think the clown makeup fit her sort of better than anyone else, because she also says crazy stuff, right? But she is there's no denying and I think she's smart in her own way. I think she might just be misled. So I'm not an anti Corinne Jean-Pierre. I kind of can't take her seriously at all, right? The minute I see her, I kind of start laughing. And I would only ever look for her for Moscow time stuff. Like, I don't even think of her as like setting up arguments, right? There was an interview the other day where she was with a CNN person, right? And they did the wide shot, and she's talking about how much energy Joe Biden has, and she's like, it's very for me to keep up with him, she said. And you see, I think it was Jake Tapper from CNN, like, doing his best not to laugh. Imagine that's your job. Sit in front of Karen Jean-Pierre and take her seriously, right? But that's the problem. That's the problem, is that the people who are paid to sit in front of Karen Jean-Pierre and take her seriously have lost all persuasion capacity now, right? Or at least very less. So although Cernovich says here, right, that these people are brainwashed by public school, believe the news, no chance at life, these are the masses, right? One way of actually looking at World War III now, this is still, this is almost 3 years away from when Cernovich first made that observation. What I see now is the ruling elites and this new elite actually competing for hearts and minds. And I'd say Vivek obviously is in the new elite part. I'd say RFK, for example, very closely aligned to this new elite system. And of course, Trump, by signaling to homeschool families, and he talked about the growth of homeschool since COVID. It's astronomical. Like, I forget the number he mentioned, but it's like 100x or something crazy. We're dealing with millions and millions of American families now, and we used to be dealing with a tiny little minority. And now we're dealing with a huge group, right? So I don't know the exact numbers and population, but even Trump said the numbers are through the roof. So if you're looking at polling and you're looking at this stuff and you're looking at vote cultivation and you're saying, oh, if I just give this $10,000 tax rebate, I'm actually going to be cultivating all of these votes, right? All of these people. It's a lot. It's a lot. And the reason I mention all of this, right, the homeschool and what's going on with, even take, for example, what's going on with the administrative state with Trump and all these ridiculous judges and all of these ridiculous people. And you think again about what's happened with the SEC this week. Now, yesterday I talked a little bit about this on FedWatch with Ansel Linder. We were talking about the court case that Grayscale won over the SEC. And now, of course, yesterday they delayed all of those ETF decisions until October or something. But it doesn't change the fact that the normal courts, the federal courts, slammed the SEC in a way that underscored their corruption and showed that they are not even coming close to doing their job. Now, this all reminded me of a case that I've been following since 2022 that I have shared with you before. It's the Jarkissi versus the SEC case. Now, the Jarkissi versus SEC case, a judgment came down in 2022 in, I think, May. And what the Fifth Circuit Court held there was that in-house courts, not just in the SEC, but all in-house courts, are actually unconstitutional. They're unconstitutional because you are guaranteed a right to jury by peers. So what that really means, though, when you say jury by peers, what it really means is that lay people with no experience in sophisticated law can still understand it. There is a standard that the laws written of the land should be understandable to most people. Now, it isn't like this. It's not like a newspaper where it's got to be readable by 12-year-olds. Like, we're not, the point is not to lower it, the legal logic to a point where mentally unfit people can understand it. So it's not this like make it so everyone can understand it. That's not the point. The point is an aggregate of jury should be able to apply the law in a way with instruction and with help and hand holding in a way that we just accept as fair, right? Or at least accept as justice. So that's a right Americans have. They have a right to a jury by peers. And when you create these administrative state legal entities like the SEC and its own enforcement branch, you're actually abridging that. But that's not even the major thing. The major thing, that was just one reason. The major one is the separation of powers, that the SEC, which is an executive branch agency in the United States, that an executive branch agency, the three divisions of power, you have executive, legislative, and judicial. The SEC executive branch, so they have regulatory powers, and because they have regulatory powers, they're fine and they're totally within their rights to create different laws and all that. The problem was they had a court inside of them, and that court inside of them was able to also enforce the laws they were passing, right? And now this is systematic across the American system. What I've been saying for a long time is what we are dealing with in World War III is actually ending World War II. Because what I say regularly is that everything that made World War II winnable, creating this administrative state, creating the aircraft carriers, the military industrial complex, all these things, we never turned it off. We never shut off the aircraft carrier. We never fired the bureaucrats that saved the day apparently back then, right? We never did any of that. We just kept growing it. And the SEC, enforcement branch, all of these things that come up from this administrative state are what it's actually going to go away in World War III. The goal of World War III is to simplify American organization back to what it was before World War II, and even further, maybe, right? Even further than World War II. We might even go back before the Civil War. We'll see how much we unravel and reveal and all of these things, right? It's the find out part, right? Exactly how far does this hypnosis go back, right? So, is that ignoring the separation? Whoops. Had a connection issue. One second. Making sure everyone's there. Clown Jean-Pierre. All right, there we go. So, just making sure we're all good, right? This Jarkissi case, it's called Jarkissi versus SEC. As it goes further up the ladder and goes to the Supreme Court, will actually be about whether any bureaucracy can have an enforcement angle inside of it, right? So it's much larger. It has all of the administrative law judges in America could be out of a job, right, tomorrow. And when I go back to thinking about Cernovich's characterization of America dividing into these three classes, the ruling elite, the masses, and the new elite, I continue to see it as a race between the new elite and the ruling elite to actually persuade the masses in one way or the other. Now, I don't think you need all of the masses, right? You don't need all of them, but you need some of them, right? You need some of them. And with what's going on and the messaging coming from people like Vivek, is probably the stupid stupid Rumble one giving me trouble today. I'm not sure. Did Rumble even go live? Did Rumble even go live? It better have. I don't think it did. I don't think Rumble went live today. That is disappointing. I'm very angry about that. I don't understand how I can't get it to work. I did the things that I had to do today that didn't go right the other days. What a piece of shit. Just give me a second. I just want to see if it's running. I doubt it. No, stupid piece of shit didn't run. Sickening. Sickening. All right. Rumble's got to get its act together, man. So, yesterday, Vivek, well, I don't know if it's Rumble, but it drives me nuts. Like, it drives me nuts. It drives me absolutely crazy. Let me see what's going on with this dumb thing. Absolutely hate Rumble. Yeah, cringe Jean-Pierre. I like that name too. Yeah. What a total piece of shit this is. Unreal. Waiting for stream and you're offline. Oh, you cocksucker. Fuck you. All right. Sorry about that, guys. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. All right. So FBI, right? Vivek came out with his actual blueprint yesterday to destroy the FBI as we know it, right? And it's amazing. It's like infograph stuff, right? Again, as Cernovich yeah. Well, I don't know if it's the internet, guys. I think it's just shitty. Honestly, man, I can't stand technology that doesn't work. How can they not figure this out? How is it possible? How? Like, is there no one who thinks streaming is a good business idea and no one can create a product for streaming? Is that the problem? Like, I feel like every kid in the world wants to be a streamer now, and no one can create a streaming product, right? Like, it's nuts. Anyway, so here's what Vivek decided. He created, better than a whiteboard than I can make. He created an infograph about what the FBI is today. It's different pieces, right? So he says there's, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Defense, Treasury, shows all the different things, right? The FinCEN is in there, right? He's got FinCEN in there. The key problems, right? He's got 3 key problems. It's an excellent infograph to understand what the FBI is today. Like, if you just needed to can a canned explanation of what the FBI is, his infograph is as good as you'll ever find, right? Just incredibly powerful. And then he creates future, right, in a different color and shows all the things he's going to destroy, right? He's going to move all of white collar crime over to FinCEN. I'd like to talk to him about his FinCEN plans a little, but I'm sure he's open to suggestions, right? Because we want to get rid of that motherfucker. And he goes in and just talks about what he's going to do. He's got X's. He's going to cut this one out. He's going to move the corruption from one place to like it's just a brilliant workflow of how you would fix the CIA, and it's totally, or the FBI, and it's totally understandable, right? It's easy to understand. You don't even have to sort of use your imagination, right? So that's excellent, right? Now, if you think of the SEC case, you think of what Vivek is talking about in the FBI here, and you can start to imagine that exactly what I was saying, this entire administrate that was created after World War II, it looks like their time is up. And now when I go back to what Cernovich was saying, that the 3 classes of people are this, right? That these masses, the ones that are persuaded by the administrate and the ruling elite, the capacity of that connection to hypnotize and persuade is what's ending. And you can tell and the signs are all around you. Just think of this one with the masks right now, right? So everyone talking about masks. Are they coming back? What are you going to do? Lauren Southern did a thing where she went around in Canada and asked all the Canadians, like, what are you going to do if they bring it back, right? Even had a lot of Canadians saying, no way, no way, no how. You get this fella here, Ross something on TikTok. Cernovich was talking about it. A few other people were talking about it. He's being polite. He's saying, look, we were nice to you last night. If you were in the service industry, if you were, a cashier, everyone in COVID-1 understood it wasn't your fault, right? We were not around here trying to make trouble with you. We complied because we didn't want to make your life trouble, and we understand you weren't in charge. And so he's saying, but it'll be different this time. Like, we're not letting them, like, we understand you are, doing your job. We understood you were doing your job. We were polite to you last time, but it'll be different this time. Cernovich says the same thing. He says, this is me. Some dig up a video of me explaining why I wear a mask, the logic being why I mess with clerks. It's not their fault. This time around, different story, right? And, here's my tip on how to handle that, right? This is the Bitcoiner's guide, or the this comes from my NPC management handbook, right? Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, because I actually innovated a technique during COVID-1 to not wear a mask in most stores, and it worked, right? And it wasn't the brilliant technique that I met. Anyone who's not from America is going to love this, right? This is a true story. I met some folks at when I went back to America for Bitcoin 2021. Right, not a lot of people had seen each other in a year. This was June 2021. I had been mostly in Barbados, and hadn't seen many people since the lockdowns. And I remember talking to some friends of mine in the United States who lived in southern states, and I said, well, how was it, with the mask? What'd you do? How'd you get around it? Da, 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 da. They said, I didn't wear a mask, and I said, well, how'd you do it? Right? They said, I wore a gun. I wore my gun. No one ever asked me to wear a mask. I wore my gun. Right? It's pretty good. And these are like, not just normal American people. They're not crazy, or if this was someone in Europe, it would be a character. These are like these are like grade school teachers in America, right? Hilarious. So that's not my plan. Here's what I do, and it worked. It really worked. I would go into a store without a mask. All right, like a gas station or whatever. These were hit and run things, though. This, like, grocery stores were a little different because they'd have the guy at the door, right? So that those were a little harder. But what you did was I would go into any gas station or whatever, a hit and run, like getting something and out, right? Pay the gas, get money, but here was my tactic. You got to wear a mask, right? So I never argued, masks don't work. Don't wear a mask. You're a stooge. Don't. I'm not following. None of that. Don't argue masks with people who are telling you to wear a mask. What I would say every time, and this is a perfect technique in how to manipulate and manage NPCs in your life, right? What I would just say is, no, they're not giving out fines anymore. And then the person would be like, what? No, there's no more fines, right? And so you just turn it into there's no penalty, right? I don't care about the mask. You just say there's no penalty for mask. And they'll start thinking, right? So they want to say you have to wear the mask, right? And I say, no, there's no one giving penalties. You're not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get in trouble. Let's just do this, right? And they'll think for a second. By the time they're thinking, I'm already doing what I got to do, and I'm getting the stuff, right? And then when I see they want to come back with it, I say, but guess what? I'm going to make sure you don't have to wear that mask soon, right? So then you immediately go on their side, right? You say there's no more penalties. And soon I'm gonna support you to not have to wear a mask, because you don't want to wear it all day, right? I'm already there. If you took your mask off, I wouldn't have any trouble. So that's all. And then then they start, now that you're on their side, right? They start, yeah, they're stupid, right? And then you're gone. You're just out, right? So that was a technique that worked last time. I think it would work this time again. You don't have to argue. You just have to say there's no more penalties. There's no more tickets. There's no more financial, not for you, not for me, right? They're not doing it anymore. I never knew if that was true. That was a complete lie, but I never saw anyone actually getting fines other than in Canada, right? I never actually saw fines. There might have been in the first early days, but we're talking months into the COVID mask thing by now, and people were already sick of it. So it was just, no, there's no more fines, right? Well, the minute everyone understands there's no more fines, the entire calculus about it changes. Now, again, if you go in there and say masks don't work, they know what they're going to say. It's the same conflict, right? They're just going to go into robot automaton mode. Masks work, right? Now, like, I don't care about masks, whether they work or not. Like, I can see why they would work, but they don't work in practice. But I get why you'd want to wear a mask, right? I get it. So that's what I did. That's how it worked, and I think it's a good technique, and I recommend it to anyone. Don't fight and argue about masks. Just say there's no penalties, there's no tickets, there's nothing here, right? You're not going to get in trouble. Probably is the mask thing. This is. Let me know if the YouTube has been coming in well, because I keep getting this warning. I think it's just from the Rumble not working today. I think it's just from the Rumble. Motherfuckers. So, you get that, and then just take a look at, cringe, clown Jean-Pierre yesterday saying again about the vaccines, right? So she says that the Biden administration will encourage all Americans to get an additional COVID shot in mid-September. Just 17% of the US population chose to take the last booster in September. So just 17% got the 2022 version, and now they're saying they have to go get them. And Kaneko the Great asked, what percentage of Americans will get the next booster? The answer is much less than 17, right? I can't even imagine at 10% anymore. So that's a pretty good actual barometer for the ability of the ruling elite to use media to persuade the American population. I don't think it's above 10% anymore where they can actually get them to do stuff, right? And you even think about the other now that, some of it requires information, some of it requires intermittent freeze brief. Yeah, okay. I wonder if it's. I'm going to see if it's timed for every time I hit the comments. So here's another one. Of the season they're in now and how they're behaving, and then use that to determine who do you think is going to win this battle for hearts and minds of the folks in the administrative state. And this is what it looks like. So the TLDR, this is a case that is just coming out right now. The Michigan Whitmer administration, right, in their emails, in their correspondence with each other, use Greek characters to avoid Freedom of Information Act requests. So again, you have this administrative state, right, now reverting to Greek alphabet to send information so that it doesn't get put into the public, doesn't get into the public. Saying you're asthmatic works. Good idea. Yeah, that's not a bad one, Gene. That's not a bad one. I'll use the asthmatic one too. I've got some asthma. So if you see what's happening over there in Michigan, if you see what's happening with the FBI with Vivek, if you see what's happening with the SEC and the ETF application, right? All of it in the end really does rely on the hearts and minds being nudged, persuaded, manipulated by the media and the administrate in their collusion attitudes, right? But look how weak the sauce has become. Look at how weak it's become, right? So this is your favorite propaganda outlet. This was the one that I wanted to put in Moscow time, but it actually served my purpose today for what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the ability to persuade hearts and minds here. We're talking about not just raw power, right? That I don't think is going to work. Right? I don't think it's going to work. Here's what the Washington Post, and you got to see this writer, Lauren Lumpkin. Her name is Lumpkin, right? Lumpkin. You're like your kin are lumps, right? Kin isn't just family, right? And she's got Corinne Jean-Pierre clown hair. So you have clown hair Lumpkin, right? Who wrote the following article about Joe Biden. So I don't know if you saw this, right? Joe Biden went to the public school opening in DC, in Washington, DC, coughing in his hands and shaking people's hands, right? And they came out with this following headline. This is from the Washington Post, your favorite propaganda outlet, right? President Biden's visits DC middle school to mark the start of the school classes. The president was joined by First Lady Jill Biden and a longtime English professor. And they actually, in this article, tried to suggest that at the school, it was like Beatle mania. Like Beatle mania. Now, I watched Stick, Sex, and Hammer on this morning. Did you know that they've asked the Beatles what it was like the moment they landed in America? And Paul McCartney's answer is it smelled like pee. Well, the reason it smelled like pee at LaGuardia Airport when they landed was because there were so many young girls in the crowd excited to see them that they actually peed themselves, and there was like trickles of pee headed towards the airplane. I didn't know that. I mean, I don't even know if it's true. Stick, Sex, and Hammer said it this morning. So do you think, according to the Washington Post, that a group of elementary school students were so enamored with Joe Biden showing up at their school that they were acting like it was Beatlemania? Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? Of course not, right? Of course, most of the kids were probably Let's Go Brandon, right? Most of them were probably Let's Go Brandon. Most of them, I don't care what their parents are like and what they're brainwashing them, a lot of the kids these days are going to be like the kid with the Gadsden flag. He's like the most popular kid in his school now. Did you know that? Everyone wants to be his friend. He's got the Bitcoin patch as well, right? He gave the entire school district a civics lesson, right, overnight. And so it's really about whether or not the media can get reality to look like the thing they're talking about. And as they keep talking, what they're describing becomes estranged from reality more and more, right? Like what they're writing about is less looking like reality than ever before. It's not even close. It's not even close, right? When you see all these articles on Hunter, on what's going on with Joe these days, you know, you've even got Elon Musk saying Hunter's personal shenanigans are kind of entertaining and have limited harm to others, but getting America involved in corruption with other countries is a much more serious matter, right? And they're talking about how he wrote off, like he wrote off 28 Russian escorts, right? And the Biden business model of selling access to the higher echelons of the U.S. government is a national security problem, right? And now they're doing this investigation into all the fake aliases that Joe Biden used over his career, right? It couldn't get better. So in the end, the ability to persuade, and if what Cernovich is saying is true, and I think it's true, right? We see three groups of people. We see the ruling elite, the administrative people. We see the new elite, homeschool, fit, Bitcoiners. And in the middle are these masses, right? There are. But again, it is a hearts and minds race. And I don't think the ability for these people to push it along is going to work anymore. Their capacity to persuade with paper is going down, and to persuade with the newspaper, right? So I think of them as pathetic paper machines, right? Paper state machines with their paper money, right? It's all the same thing. It's the paper money, the paper state. And they're as weak as both of those things. Exactly, like War Clandestine says it here, right? He says, the indictment didn't work. It only proved Trump was right and improved his poll numbers. They don't control Twitter this time around, so they can't effectively censor any October surprises like Hunter's laptop in 2020. Their only option is to remove him from the ballot or worse, right? Talking about Trump here. But again, what happens if they remove Trump? Well, I don't want any violence, but I'm okay with Vivek. Are you? All right. Are they gonna have to get him too? They will, right? What about RFK? They're gonna have to get him too. How long do they have to go? And then Rachel Maddow's got to sell it all. Janet Yellen's got to sell it all. The newspaper, Washington Post, who can't convince you that kids at school love Joe Biden. Don't think. We've even got. Yeah. So I could be wrong, but we've got the situation with the courts looking at the administrative law stuff. We've got the situation with the elections now, right? We know more about how that doesn't work. So the ability to actually perpetuate this state is running out of gas. And the ascendant new elite have all the tools to persuade hearts and minds. So I got a poem for it this morning, and I will read it to you. This was my Chat GPT. Sometimes I throw this stuff into Chat GPT. So I'll read this one. It was a good one. In halls of law and whispered words, a tale unfolds of eagles' herds. Post-war shadows stretched their hand to grasp the future of the land. A wave, administrative, grew. With acronyms the nation knew. FBI and SEC, CIA's dark secrecy. Agencies with tendrils long and mazes where they don't belong. Decisions not by Congress made, yet in the land their rules obeyed. A curtain rose, World War III, a stage where every line was blurred. Amidst the fire, smoke, and haze, the court did strike a spark ablaze. Jarcossy was the word of lore, that's the case in the SEC, which crumbled what was there before. Judges of admin law, they say, no more shall hold the courtly sway. An earthquake shook the crusty floor of men and women steeped in lore. Credentialism faced the threat of new elites not loyal yet. The former, armed with Ivy's pride, in networks power did reside. The latter, schooled by hearth and home, and open fields preferred to roam. 2 worlds apart, yet in the fray, for hearts and minds they both would play. Elite against elite they clashed, and war of culture unabashed. Through screens and text the battle raged, each group their prophets wised and caged. Who else the masses choose to follow? Who casts the mold for our tomorrow? Will it be those in suit and tie, with sealed degrees that reach the sky, or those who spurn the Gilded Age and pen their wisdom on a new whether dusk or dawn, the people shout the gates. Pretty good stuff, huh? Pretty good stuff. Thank you, Chat GPT. I sometimes don't need to trick it sometimes. All right, let me read some Bitcoin Go. No. It was digital gold, dude. Robert, it was digital gold. Digital gold is the future. Yeah. It's the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest thing. I don't think there's any value in gold altogether, but that's just me. I'm not going to stop you from buying gold. I just don't care. I've never been I don't get it. Like, it's jewelry, industrial purposes. Not that many. Not that. California. Good morning, Bitcoin Graffiti. Good morning, Cal. Glad you're here. These were the silver bugs. They created a silverback crypto. I know, it's so good, huh? It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. All right. Thanks, Capenta, with the low time preference. CK in the house. Love it, man. There you go. All right. Thanks for the fire. All right, team. Let me know if I missed anything this morning. It was as War Clandestine said, the end of summer, so the news is a little slow. I think next week's going to be crazy. By the way, I probably won't have a show tomorrow. I'll be at the Big Bad Brome Fair in Brome Lake, Quebec, which is a tradition where I'm from, and will occupy most of my weekend with fun and partying and all those good things. So a lot of kids, a lot of friends, a lot of that kind of stuff. All right, team. So that's all I got for today. I'll see you Monday. So nothing tomorrow, nothing Sunday. I'll see you Monday. Labor Day, Monday. Until then, enjoy your weekend, everyone. Have a great time. Can't wait to see you again Monday. Peace. Thanks for coming.